Okay, good, good. Well, I want to welcome you today. I'm Glenn Brooks. You're listening to Beyond the Formula. And when I was growing up, I still am kind of growing more aware, by the way. I'm growing more flexible. And really that's what kind of Beyond the Formula is. It's a formula is something that we step into. It becomes part of us. We kind of buy into things without knowing it. You know, your friend got a certain kind of job, and next thing you know, you're at that company, and so sometimes it's by osmosis. When I was growing up, my grandmother, I never saw her stand up because she had such bad arthritis, and there was a whole bunch of pills on the chest table. And my father took medications. My father had very bad chronic sinus headaches. So the formula of medications was very much around me. And it was considered kind of part of the family, you know, like you go to the doctor, you go to the pharmacist. Now, about when I was 16, I had really bad sinus headaches. And it's interesting, I kind of followed in the tradition of my father, not knowing there's anything I could do. So my mother brought me to the pediatrician, and he prescribed a more strong medication. So then I started to get insomnia as a side effect. And I would stay up at night. And interestingly enough, I stayed up and I started to read different books. I started to get really curious about, I don't know, I just got curious about what kind of life I could have. And I picked up a book called Consumer Beware by Beatrice Hunter. And I started to think, wow, what if what we ate impacted our well-being? And next thing you know, I stopped eating sugar. I stopped eating processed dairy products, and my headaches went away. And the closest person in my life to me was my grandfather. He was the only person who really kind of was patient with me and loving. And I was going to move into a condo with him. He went to the doctor on a Wednesday, and he passed away the next morning. They told him he was in normal health, whatever that means. So in my life, this relationship to pharmaceuticals and kind of this formula of like your normal health seemed like a kind of an early graveyard. You know, there was no vitality in it. There was no pulse. There was no rhythm. And yet it was kind of this silent movie in the background. Take pharmaceuticals. The food doesn't really matter. And my father was a pretty smart man. So, of course, years and years later, he took so many medications. And next thing you know, I remember the day this occurred, he went to the cardiologist, and the cardiologist said to him he was a frail man. And I remember thinking, I never saw my father that way. He was a frail man. What happened? And he recommended this heart surgery. Well, he never recovered from that surgery. He was in and out of emergency rooms and intensive care units. And I remember there was this one day, and I want to acknowledge this is so true about my father, Bert Brooks. I was adopted. I found out I was adopted when I was under 1. And he felt that most people were very superficial. He stayed away from people. But he always was pretty genuine. So there was this play or something at the nursing home or at the recovery center. My mother told some people how much he enjoyed it. I remember he vigorously, even though he had some kind of inhaler device down his throat, he vigorously said, no, it wasn't a good play. So I want to acknowledge his authenticity. And so he passed away. The day before he passed away, something miraculous happened. I talked to him on the phone, and I felt there was a part of him that I could hear and listen to, which is where I actually loved him. And we connected. And then he passed away within 24 hours. So I guess in my family of origin, the thing around health and kind of conforming and really that your body is just something you kind of drag along. So now let's bring this up to date. About a year ago, my whole life is, turned around on so many levels. First of all, I want to say I have the honor and wonder of working with Rose Rivera, who I just love to pieces. She's my co-host, my producer. She brings a wonder and inquisitiveness and a curiosity. I'm really happy you're here today, Rose.
Aw, thank you, Glenn. I'm excited to be here. I think we have a really interesting conversation coming up. So, yeah.
So, Rose, I'm at this, I was making it a point to get out and hike last year and run. And It was a very freezing day, and I put the radio on, and I'm listening to this national radio show, and I hear the words from Dr. Leyla Ali, and I thought, oh my God, this woman's a pharmacist, and she's talking about the concerns and dangers. And she says she grew up in a medical household, and she'd been a pharmacist 20 years, but she never learned the connection between food, mental attitude, consciousness. And she said, what happens is you take pharmaceuticals, you get weaker, not better. And she spoke with such wonder and conviction. I came home, and I called her up. I said, Leyla, you got to come to my next Unscripted Power event. She said, I'm there. And she shared the story of growing up, and she's with us today. I want to say, this is the book, by the way. Hope this comes across on the camera. Off Balance. It's really a way of life in our country. She's committed as a holistic pharmacist and a health coach and a healing coach to help people find another path. Welcome, Leyla Ali.
Thank you, Glenn. Thanks for having me. Thanks for doing this and keeping the energy going.
Oh, you're welcome. It's great having you. So as I share, and as Rose has that wonderful quality of listening, and she says we have a great contributor, what do you want to share with people? Because a lot of people listening and watching, a lot of people get into this notion they need medications to live in this culture. It's just kind of woven in, like the doctor pulls you aside and says, well, it's like this. If you have diabetes, you take medication. If you have a thyroid condition, you take medication. If you have blood pressure, so little by little, it slips in the back door only to become a way of life. What changed for you? Like, share with us your story, because at one point, what was normal for you in your life, the formula for you was dispense the medications, make sure they get the right one, and you're a good pharmacist. What happened?
That's a big question here, but it's definitely what most of people still want, just medications and drugs. So it's still a great business. We call those people that come in wanting the drugs great customers. But the thing is, it changed for me when I was in pharmacy school. I grew up and we always had drugs in the house, and my father, being a medical doctor, he always had some of the pills in the hallway closet. And, I always felt safe knowing that they were there and that they'd be there to help us if we needed it. And it wasn't until I actually got into pharmacy school and we started learning about rheumatoid arthritis. And I was like, rheumatoid arthritis kind of runs in my family. My mother and her brother and her sister all had 2 knee replacements. And I was kind of paying closer attention. And I saw at that point that if you start taking the medication, they're going to give you anti-inflammatory to reduce the swelling. They don't know what's causing it. And then they'll give you another drug. When that one stops working, then they'll add another one and more side effects. And then, soon they'll start reducing the immune system since it causes the swelling. So the immune system causes swelling that causes the pain. And, after I learned about how they treat it, I didn't feel safe knowing that I might need medication one day. And at that point, I kind of had a wake-up call. And again, I didn't do much of it at that time because you had to finish pharmacy school, right? Get out. But then after pharmacy school, I had that second epiphany when I was learning about how I was reading books that said 95% of diseases are caused by what we eat. And I'm like, I wouldn't, that can't be true. I would have heard of that. Here I am, I have a doctor title and a healthcare profession. If that was true, I would have heard about it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I never did. Nobody ever told me that. So, so at that point, I knew that's when I really started waking up and say, there's something wrong here. Here we are, people depend upon us for all their healthcare needs, but we're not trained in the basics of health anymore. We're trained in drugs. So I felt really disappointed. That's when I started really going on the adventure to learn all the different holistic things. People are suffering for years on health conditions that can be easily treated holistically, and they think they just have to take these pile of pills. So we're just in this crazy world of pharmaceutical domination.
Pharmaceutical domination. What was it like in your household, Rose? Your parents growing up, was it were pharmaceuticals a way of life or no? Or what was your experience with as a child and growing up?
Sure. Well, I think I have maybe an unusual experience because I grew up in the Virgin Islands. So we actually didn't have a lot of allopathic medicine down there to begin with. So we didn't have a lot of pills and chemically laced things. It was still the tradition of, oh, you have a cut, go grab some aloe out of the yard and put it on the cut. So I had a very different experience, and I didn't have that interaction with drugs or the pushing of drugs onto me and my family until we moved to Connecticut. when I was in high school. And then it was really odd. And my family actually got in a lot of fights with a lot of doctors over different things because my family's always been very well educated and researched and proactive with their health. So it was interesting.
What bubbles to you when you hear Layla's story? What strikes you?
I think what strikes me the most is that disconnect between food and health, especially now I've learned about why the medical industry is the way it is and why they train doctors the way they do, particularly in the US, but it's really disheartening and kind of amazing to not have that direct connection between what you put in your body is going to affect your health. I mean, on one level, it just seems obvious, and I think it's such a disservice that we've broken that to the extent that like you said, even doctors, it's just not something they think about because it's not in their training. They're not trained in nutrition. They're not trained in the effect of you eat this is what happens to your body. And I think it's so important, Dr. Ali's message, because coming through the quote normal system of education and then having that disconnect yourself and having that breakthrough, I think it's something that more and more people are coming to on every level.
Yeah, I think someone said to me, Leyla, and with Dr. Leyla Ali here in Beyond the Formula, I think someone said like the vaccines are increasing as an example. Whether you want Donald Trump or not, early in the campaign he mentioned a correlation between vaccinations and autism. So the culture at large hears these things. We hear, for instance, that if you're depressed, take an antidepressant. If you have a flu, take an antibiotic. If you had to say to the people listening who are either on medications or they've been recommended to be on medications, what wisdom would you want to share with them? Because you're a rare breed. You're not in that. You're not in. Your mind is not in the pill box right now. So what would you share with them? They're listening. They're like, wow, this is a pharmacist saying there's something beyond the pill box. What would you want to share with them as a beginning place?
Well, just the awareness that doctors and pharmacists aren't trained in health anymore. They're not. We don't learn the basics of health. We don't learn nutrition. We don't learn healthy ways to deal with emotion. Right? Everything's a pill. So, if you depend upon doctors and pharmacists for all your healthcare needs, in my book I have it like analogy to depending upon a pesticide expert for your exotic garden, for the complete care of your exotic garden. But of course you need sunshine, you don't just need toxins, right? To keep you fully healthy. So people have to take their health in their own hands and understand that doctors aren't trained in it. They're not trying to do you bad. They're doing the best they can, but their training's also been taken over by the pharmaceutical companies as well. So you're on your own these days, or you have to find someone holistic, and it's on you to get healthy. That's the beginning. Go ahead.
Okay, the beginning. The beginning is, I guess, yeah, the beginning is that food, mood, physical well-being, sense of energy. Now, a big eye-opener for you, a huge part of your awakening was this idea of purification, cleansing, and detoxification. That was another thing you didn't learn as you were getting your degree, and as a pharmacist, that was new for you.
Yeah.
How did that occur? How did you learn about something you didn't hear about before, and it was like, wow, detoxification, what's that?
Well,
What was that like?
It was kind of trendy at the time, and I actually asked a friend of mine because he knew about him, and I was just I'll do a cleanse. It can't be bad. I knew nothing about it, so he brought over those books, and I was just gonna skim it just enough to get enough information to go and do what I was gonna do, and then I really was captured by these books, and I started reading it from cover to cover, and I actually pulled out my old therapeutics book to look up some causes of common diseases, and even things like gastroesophageal reflux disease, where you have the heartburn after food.
Yeah.
They give you some technical explanation, but they don't. But that's obvious food. I mean, everything, acne, the cause is multifactorial and not completely understood. Just really.
Oh,
vague.
wow.
Yeah, I mean.
So what did you make? What did you make of that? That's really interesting. So a good chunk of, as you tried to do your pharmacist, and what you got from the information was that, what's the distinction between how they view illness and how you see well-being now? Well, if you had to separate those two worlds, what would you say?
Well, I mean, well-being is just keeping yourself in balance, body, mind, spirit, you know, but keeping your thoughts empowered, and thoughts are big too. I mean, you know, you can do so much just with your thoughts. And I mean, the way people see disease, I know Bernie Siegel was talking about it. Do you see it as a monster, or do you see it as a little puff of smoke that you can get rid of, right?
That's a great, I love that.
Yeah, I mean, the way people see their own disease, their thoughts, dealing with emotions, not hanging on to negative emotions, and just going back in balance. Do you have toxins you have to get rid of? Do you have some nutrients that you're missing? So going back to basics is really the message, and that's wellness. And then you talk about illness. You know, if you want to get rid of illness, you would go to wellness, but our illness care is the drugs that keep you, you know, they say 83% of spending for healthcare is on chronic diseases. So people are taking these terms long-term, a lot of inflammation things, diabetes, and things that can be much simpler treated with going back to basics.
Yeah.
Suffering and struggling for years.
Now, Rose, I wish we'll need to get your copy of the book, but Off Balance has a lot of stories in here. They're really inspiring stories. So the book isn't written in a conventional pharmaceutical way by any means. It's stories of people that have dramatic turnarounds.
Right.
How did this turn your life around? Because obviously you were very involved with meeting some of these people. What was the first story you heard that really revealed to you this kind of the notion of off balance, and how off balance is kind of the culture we live in? Is there one story that kind of like got you on the boat in a big way?
There's 14 interviews, and 8 of them are people that healed themselves. And you know, the first person I found, he wasn't healed, but he was a medical anthropologist who also had a herb garden, and he was the first. And I had a degree in anthropology, so that was the first one I reached out to, and that kind of was my bridgeway to find the other people. But the people that healed themselves, they're all extraordinary stories. I mean, the chronic fatigue girl, Storm Cole, she was like 22 years old and just feeling terrible. And she goes to the doctor, does a blood test, and, you know, they don't see anything, right? So they have nothing for her. And then she does her own research and says, oh, I think I have chronic fatigue. Her doctor that she's known all her life laughs at her and says, I have it too. You know, he has, you know, so she went back, and that's all. Like, what would you do? If she was there, she'd be disabled by now. She depended on her doctor, you know? She went to a naturopath, she did some detox, learned how to set limits, you know, she has emotional things to work with, and she's healing other people now. So all 8 of them healed themselves, and they all changed their lives because they knew that they weren't going to find what they needed from the doctor. So they all changed their life to become practitioners of some sort. So they're all very extraordinary stories, and they just showed up for me. It was amazing.
What does healing mean for you now, as compared to before you discovered what real healing is? Like when you were a pharmacist or a conventional pharmacist, did healing, was that in your vocabulary or awareness, or that's fairly new?
There's treatment and medication and therapy and compliant patients, you know, patients that take their medications as prescribed, and we don't want them to miss a dose. So they had that, but healing isn't really something, you know, we want the long-term customers, right?
You know, Rose said something to me one day about compliance. And one of the Dr. Bernie Siegel's big thing is that people that are compliant, they die quicker.
Yeah, they did.
So Rose said to me that, you know, she wasn't complying. And she said it so clearly. It was like, wow, it was so like, I admired her so much because, you know, when you're a kid and your parents take you to the doctor or dentist, it's kind of like, it's inherent in that you're going to comply.
But not just being compliant. It was more about questioning things. The ones that are saying, why are we doing this? And not just doing what you say. Okay, you say this. Okay, it's the ones that are fighting and questioning and saying, why is this necessary? You know, so again, taking their health into their own hands. The ones that give the nurses the biggest headache, right? Those are the ones that do the best.
Oh my goodness, I laugh because I'm thinking, when you said that, I'm thinking of my father. He's been diabetic since he was 10, and you know, they didn't expect him to live past 20, and he's in his 50s now, actually his early 60s. But he's had a series of strokes because of it, and you know, some of the damage that's been done and whatnot. And they wanted to put him on statins and lower his cholesterol and all this stuff, and he just gave him hell. And he said, absolutely not. And cholesterol is good for you. And it's what's going to build back my brain from the bleed and all this stuff. And sure enough, he put himself through his own regimen and he completely healed. And the doctors there, they were not happy that he healed so well. Let me put it that way. They were pretty perturbed.
Yeah, doctors just like they learn that they're the boss, and they're just like are taught that I think they build their own pedestal as part of pharmacy school, right?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wonder, actually, how did you feel when you started learning all of these more holistic methods and connections to food, having gone through the system and I'm sure spent a lot of money, going through school? Did you feel betrayed? I mean, how did you handle that?
I was really mad actually at first, and I did feel betrayed. And I would tell people like, it's all a scam, and then people would just say, "A lot of people would like your job. You make good money." I'm like, they don't get it. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
and I think some pharmacists actually get it, but you're just part of this. You're this tiny little cog in the wheel, right? And you can't really do much unless you really do an effort. So I think some get it, most don't. The ones that get right out of pharmacy school, they don't want to hear anything about it. They just, they owe 200,000, and last thing you want to tell them is that everything they learned is a scam, But
Yeah.
yeah, I did go through some stuff with that though. I was actually really mad for a while, and then it's set me on my path, so I know it's all meant to be. But
Wow.
So yeah, it's a powerful question we always ask you, right? So the recognition that what you've been schooled in isn't the way they tell you it is.
what were you schooled in?
In other words, what they schooled you in, what they told you was real, wasn't real.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, what we needed for a job to sell pharmaceuticals. It's not about health.
Right.
Really, we shouldn't even be considered healthcare practitioners. We're more like toxicologists, right?
Right.
About health. I mean, I think that's a big problem there. And people are depending upon us too much.
Do you think, now that you sort of have both sides, where do you think and how do you think allopathic medicine and all the pharmaceuticals fit in? I mean, is there a benefit? Is there a legitimate benefit still to these things in certain circumstances?
I think it is legitimate. Like if you think about antibiotics were discovered, they were helping people save lives, right? They were curing things that people would die from, gunshot wounds and different diseases back in the 20s and 30s. So that was huge. But now look at antibiotics. They're overprescribed. There's resistance, and they're given out on prescriptions like candy, right? I mean, you have an itchy throat, they give you an antibiotic. So it started out with a really good place, and it's just become a business. So a lot of the good has been just washed away. And if it was up to me, I would have it so they would just be one option. Like in the early 1900s, right? It was one option. You can go to herbalists, you can go to a doctor, you can go to an acupuncturist, and they're all on the level playing field. And now it's just the doctors here and everybody else is off on the side, shoved in the corner, and they're like the bosses, and their stuff is covered on insurance, right? So everything else is irrelevant. But if I could redo it, I would just have them one along with all the rest of them. Nothing better. And if you go on a medication, you don't need to be on what medication do you be on forever? Nothing. We should get on a medication and start figuring out how to get off of it, right? And get back in balance. So they tell you have to be on these things forever. It's like, well, I mean, if you go to a doctor, you will. If you go find other ways, there's ways to heal everything, right? There's ways to heal diabetes. There's ways to heal blood pressure, cholesterol you can change. I mean, everything, there's better ways to do it than being on drugs the rest of your life.
What moved you to want to be a coach? So you're a holistic pharmacist. You deal with a lot. It seems like you deal with a lot of people. A lot of people ask you questions. You've had to become a different kind of human being in some sense because now you're dealing with the issues of soul, mind, body, food, earth. Now I'm inspired you're a coach. What's your vision of being a coach?
I think I want to be the starting point for people that want to get off their medications, and kind of, because the whole mindset needs to be, changed, and it's just this belief that you have to be on drugs and there's so much more. So just educate on the mindset. I mean, I'm not trained in nutrition or some details, but I think in the overall thing, I'd have something great to offer people. Because a lot of people don't even know it's possible to get off their meds and they're on a pile of pills and they don't know why, and I think I can help change that. So
That's
really
great.
yeah.
I'm excited that you're a coach. Like on the way here, I was listening that they said they found the second mosquito in relation to the Zika. Is it the Zika virus? The Zika? Am I saying it the right way? Zika?
Yep.
Okay.
So.
Well, anyway, I think the idea of you coaching, Leyla, and I certify coaches and work with coaches. I think it's great because there's so many people. Like you're like such a great resource. There's a lot of people, they come home from the pharmacy, and I think they don't know what's the next step. And it's. I mean, I had something happen recently. I never take antibiotics, and I took doxycycline because I had a tick bite, and I took it, and I knew it's incredibly sun sensitive, and I took it because I did a several month series on the healing Lyme disease, and a few doctors told me it's the only thing they would prescribe, and they would help people rebuild their intestinal flora with probiotics, and so I got off that antibiotic, and within I'd say 4 days I developed a snake-like rash.
Oh, wow.
And it was so intense, Leyla and Rose. Rose actually saw me at the tail end of it. But it was like, oh my God, the emotional, it was almost like there was so much holistically involved because the skin impacts your emotions at such a deep level. Oh my God, there was some nights it was like I just cried out to stop itching. And I didn't want to take steroids. I didn't take steroids. And so one day I go into the pharmacy to return something. And I remember this day pretty well because I thought I was living in a leper colony. I just felt I couldn't touch anybody. I felt the itch would never leave. And I saw my universe from this little portal. And it was interesting because that day, a friend of mine has written like 20 books on natural health. And he told me this little story about having shingles. And he said to me, there's 2 levels of illness. So one is, the one we're dealing with is what we're dealing with. It's one level. And there's another level where the universe, the divine, the spiritual energy of who we are helps us at this other level. So there's 2 levels when you talk about healing. So one level is you're dealing with symptoms. There's another level where there's a lesson. There's something else going on at a soul level. And so it inspired me because I guess a lot of times with the way we're taught about illness, we're like random victims of things. And I realize when you bring a bigger picture in there, that your illness or things also reflect the quality of your life, the quality of interactions, how much energy you take in, how you see beauty. And it gave me a lot of appreciation. And one of the things that gave me an appreciation, the antibiotics and myself don't seem to get along. So I really examined that. There's a Chinese doctor in New York that I'm probably going to work with if it ever happens again. But I realized why I love the idea of you coaching is that I think there's a lot of fear in the equation. I think a lot of people tell me, I'd like to get your feedback and Rose's on this. Do a lot of people just take medications, not just to conform, because they're really scared if they don't, something bad will happen? Like, what's your take about why people are so compliant? Or like, what's your take about why do we take medications? Why are we on this this conveyor belt right now?
We got a big business system happening here. I mean, I think that's the easiest answer, right? I mean,
Yeah.
If you go back to the 1900s, when they were all on the even playing field, then they had, I don't know, you heard the Abraham Flexner, and they did the Flexner report. They wanted to review all the medical schools and get them more, so they're consistent. And so they had a guy go, but he was actually from the American Medical Association. So his agenda was to discredit all the natural. So at that point, everything else got discredited, set aside, got a medical school. And then they've been taken over since then. Then they get a few drugs that help, like the antibiotics did amazing things, and they just build trust. They make that money. They use it to create advertising. That advertising on the TV and the magazines, on the internet, you've seen it everywhere. You can't avoid it. It's in our consciousness everywhere. So, I mean, it's just like, it's something that they've created that's so normal now for people. And then they see that, and only, United States and New Zealand are the only ones that have the commercials, the direct-to-consumer advertising that's legal. Everywhere else, they don't. So a drug makes something. Here, they put it on TV, and then they got people asking their doctors for it, you know, like
Yes.
the greatest thing. And, you know, once drugs get off the market, they barely test it. They test them as little as they can to push them out on the market. So, you know, get a new iPhone. Don't get the new drug. Get a old drug that's been tested. So there's nothing new. They're just trying to get Me Too drugs. They call them Me Too drugs. They just change them a little bit and get them out to sell. So it's just a business system that's completely out of control. And even the people that push it don't know. You know, even the pharmacists, even the people that work for the pharmaceutical companies don't know the truth anymore, right? They're in this wheel getting the drugs as well. The doctors, I see doctors take a bunch of medications for themselves too. So everybody's part of the system here. And even the stockholders that are making money off it probably don't know either. I mean, Steve Jobs, I guess, you know, he had all this money. You have rich people that don't know about holistic things. And I think there's that trust too. So if I was going to a lawyer, an accountant, I know that they know their job better than we do. You go to a doctor, you expect them to have that same level. Like you trust your doctor. They're the healthcare expert, right? And
Yes.
you know, so it's so many angles that it's out of control where they built this false world that we live in here. So
Just you know, Rose, I was watching something yesterday actually with was it Earl Jones, the voice of Darth Vader actually, and he gets on this commercial, and it's almost like he's sitting in your living room and he's saying he has diabetes, and he's mentioning this medication, and then when he stops talking about how great it is, the terrifying list of what it does as a side effect comes on. You know, suicidal thoughts, the ability not to stand up, urination to the point of bleeding and passing out. And they kind of, we're almost nullified, a lot of people, that they put these it's almost like they're saying to us, these are dangerous things. Maybe you don't take them. And we somehow, it's so normal now, normalized.
They show the images of people having fun while they mention.
Yes.
So we're more visual people, right? It's like,
yes.
You don't take them seriously. They should show people actually experiencing the side effects. You know?
Yes, that would be brilliant.
Get a transplant in the hospital with the kids standing around the bed, you know, instead of them walking on the beach having fun. So it's, and even the acid reflux, when I spoke about that, it's like they have people on commercials, they eat all this junk food. It's like, it's okay, there's acid reflux medicine.
Yes.
You know, you have acid reflux because your body's trying to create balance. You know, so it's not okay to eat a bunch of junk food, let your body respond, and then suppress your body's response. You know, it's sad news, but
I'm excited that you're a healing and health coach, a real health coach, or healing and real health coach. You know, back in the 60s, Dick Gregory, who I love a lot, I've had a chance to meet Dick Gregory, political activist and author. They used to run cigarette commercials on TV, Marlboro, and the cowboy would ride to this beautiful part of the mountain. And so Dick Gregory says, run the same commercial. And he says, this here is Marlboro country. Have it be a graveyard.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So
yeah,
I want to say to people, the book again, full of stories and great wisdom, Off Balance with Dr. Leyla Ali, healing and holistic coach. And let people know how they can be in touch with you.
Well, the website is offbalancethebook.com. And I also have drleylaali.com. That's drleylaali.com. And I'm also working on a holistic directory. We're creating one to find the practitioners that are trained both holistically and medically. So we're trying to find those unique people. There's not that many that kind of get it, and we're trying to get a group of them. And I'm actually working with another, business we're starting to conspire to get membership so we can really get a group of these people together because they're not united. And that would be great. So that's on holisticmedicalnetwork.com. And I actually have a blog there that I've been doing.
Oh, great. Holisticmedicalnetwork.com.
Yeah. So.
Now, Rose, I wanted to give you I wanted to hear your genius express itself. I kind of went on, but I was like, what is Rose? What do you feel is the takeaway, the thing that moves you when you're hearing Leyla speak? Because to me, it's like, wow, she's just pioneering something, and she's a voice. I like to see her voice ignite a whole movement among pharmacists, and really the idea of the pharmacist as a coach and educator. Wow, what's your take?
Yeah, it's interesting, that idea about the pharmacist being your coach and educator, because I think they used to be. It goes back to that trust, right? People used to go to their pharmacist and say, hey, I've got this almost like a doctor. Do you have anything? What would you recommend? And now they don't have anything to really recommend because they're just, like you said, in this system. And so what comes through for me is at any point in that chain, you can break it. And I think at the level of the pharmacist, they don't realize how much power they have, because just like Dr. Ali did, they can re-educate themselves and recognize that there's a reason they were taught the things they were taught in school, and it has nothing to do with the health of people and everything to do with pushing drugs for the companies. I mean, they just have, basically the pharmaceuticals just have a huge sales force in doctors and pharmacists, right? That's all they are at this point, which is very sad to say, because I think people that go into the healthcare system, they go with the best intentions. Yes, I'm sure there's a lot of them that go, well, that's a great career because I make a lot of money. But there's also a lot of people that go in because they want to help other people, and they're not getting trained for that. So that's why I wanted to know if Dr. Ali had a moment of really feeling angry, because I think when people feel that an injustice has been done to themselves, that's when they really take up that mantle to act. So at the level of the pharmacist, to come in and say, by the way, you spent $200,000 and they just taught you a bunch of nonsense so they could sell some drugs. How do you feel about that? That's a nice inroad, I think, instead of a normal consumer going to them and be like, well, I read this blog online and it said that this isn't really good for me. You know, it's a different point of power that someone like Dr. Ali can insert herself into that chain and really break it and get to the heart of other pharmacists and other people in the medical industry. So I think it's a wonderful place, and I'm really excited for the work that she's doing.
I mean, I totally concur with Rose. Dr. Robert Mendelsohn was my hero. I had the honor of meeting him. His book, Confessions of a Medical Heretic, was just brilliant, funny, insightful. How to Raise Healthy Children in Spite of Your Doctor. I think I wore out 2 copies of that book. Leyla, what Rose just said is so true. Like, you have a unique, distinctive, huge contribution, and my intent would to see you really go to another level and hold huge webinars and seminars to educate the public, because really what's happened in some way, you have a powerful, wondrous mission. And I see you coming alive and touching so many people. I love you. You've been with us today on Unscripted Power TV on our Beyond the Formula segment. Thank you so much, Leyla. Appreciate you.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for supporting the message and helping me keep getting it out there. So we'll keep plugging away and trying to get
We've only just begun. Thank you, Leyla.
Thank you, guys.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks for
Your life precious, enjoy it. And you're making life more precious by what you're doing, Leyla.